Hey, everybody, and especially those who were not able to join us today for our Stamp Club meeting. This is Laurie Meyer with Stamped Greetings, and today I want to share some super cute cards. I will be recreating the one in the upper left, and the one in the lower right I just wanted to talk about for a minute. But it's kind of interesting. Just a minute ago before I hit the record button, we were talking about this suite and the fact that when we first saw it, let me show it to you. This is in the current catalog that will be ending pretty soon. It's just an amazing bundle, and it's a full suite. It's called Rain or Shine, and it includes a stamp set, dies, an embossing folder, paper, and also some embellishments. And I'll be very honest with you, when I first saw this, I didn't really stop and take a look at this page. It wasn't anything that drew my attention, but I've seen a lot of cards and other projects made with the products in this suite, and darn it, it's so cute. So cute. So I just wanted to first show you this one. This is a bridge card, unintended, because you'll see this little bridge going from one side to the other, and it fit absolutely perfectly. It is made with one of the pieces in the designer series paper, and I'll talk about that in just a second. When I post this video, I'm going to link another video because we made a card very similar to this months ago, and I followed the exact same directions that I used then. The only difference was that rather than a piece of cardstock, I used the ridge, and you'll see that again when we look at the other card. But the reason I wanted to show you this is just like any suite of products or group of products, there's so many things that you can do. And this was just one example. So I started with this card, and then I got completely carried away because I thought, I want to make this is kind of an easy step card. It's sort of a fake step card. We'll call it a faux easy step card. And it's super fun because it has a lot of dimension. It has two different layers that open up. And if I were to sit it down, it's going to sit like this. It folds into a regular A2 size. So it's 5.5 inches wide, 4.25 inches high. And there are just so many things that you can do with this kind of card. And it's really, really easy to make. I'm going to jump in and show you how to make this. And I will be honest up front, I've done a lot of shortcuts. You're not going to see me cutting a lot or anything like that because I really wanted to get into how to make the card. And you guys know how to cut and score, but we'll be talking about some of that. So you're going to need one piece of cardstock. And I chose to use Balmy Blue. And you're going to cut that into 3 different pieces. This is going to be for the card base. And I want you to imagine the piece of cardstock. This would be the 8.5 inch side. And this is not the full 11 inch side because you're not going to use an entire sheet of cardstock. But one of them you're going to cut to 8.5 by 5.5. So it's the regular size that you would normally cut. It's half a sheet of cardstock. And this is going to be what we're going to use to make the real base of the card. And you'll see that in just a minute. So again, this is 8.5 by 5.5. And then you're going to cut 2 pieces that are 8.5 inches long. And these are 1.5 inches wide. And these 3 pieces are going to be the bones for what we're going to make. The larger piece is going to make the inner part, and the 2 pieces, these 2, are going to be the ones that are going to go front and back when we put it together. The other thing, and let's just do this, and then we'll kind of construct the card as we go. So this is the piece that I talked about first. This is 8.5 by 5.5. And you are going to score that. You're going to score that in 3 places. And I'm going to place this into my scoring board. And then I'm going to show you a little cheat sheet that I did that will help you with the score lines. So one of the score lines is at 3 1/4. The other is at 6 1/2. And the other is at 7 1/2. You could vary these, and we'll talk a little bit about what that would mean, because I want to explain to you why they are what they are. And we're going to look at this card because you can vary this if you want. This piece is 8 1/2 inches long. So we're pulling an inch in and then another inch. That's going to give us this little mountain right here, where this is an inch and this is another inch. So we've taken 2 inches off that 8 1/2. That's going to leave us with 6 1/2. We need to make that scored at halfway, the halfway point, because that's going to be the piece in the back and it needs to be even on both sides. So all I did was take the 6 1/2 and divide it to get 3 1/4, divide it by 2. I could make these pieces in the front larger or smaller. And whatever I do, whatever the score line is coming in from the right, whatever that distance is, you need to make the same distance for the next score line. And then whatever you have left, just take half of it. And that will make sense as you put the card together. So 8 1/2 inches, you're going to score it 3 1/4, 6 1/2, and 7 1/2. And you're going to end up with a piece. And I already have my score lines in here. On the other two, you're going to have your 8 1/2. And you're going to score those right in the middle at 4 1/4. And the reason is, when you look at that card, I want to have the piece, this is the 8 1/2 piece, it's scored at 4 1/4, so that it's exactly half when I put it on the outside of the card. So that's why I'm scoring it at 4 1/4. And I'm going to do that for both pieces. So both of those are scored at 4 1/4. And after I have scored them, let's just burnish them, and you'll see how this comes together. And it's pretty quick, actually. The first one I'm going to burnish is the one that's scored at 3 1/4, 6 1/2, and 7 1/2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take that 3 1/4, and that's going to be the first score line that I'm going to burnish. And this is really going to be the core of the card. The next one that I'm going to do is that 6 1/2. I'm going to score that the other way. I'm going to fold it the other way and give that a nice burnish. And then the last is where I scored at 7 1/2, and I'm going to fold that in the opposite direction. So you're going to see how we're forming the bones. And this is what it's going to look like when you're done with the scoring. So you have that little mountain in the front, and you have the big mountain in the back. And you can see when I put the finished card that that's going to be the inside. And we're going to construct the outside down. So if I grab the other two pieces, and these are the ones that are 8 1/2 by 1 1/2, and each is scored at the 4 1/4 inch. I'm just going to go ahead and fold those right in half. I'm going to try, it doesn't matter incredibly, but I'm really going to try to get those pretty much in the middle. So I'm really looking at the corner here and just trying to make sure that they're as centered as they can be when I burnish them. So we have our card base pieces together. We have our card base, and then we have the two pieces that are going to end up going right on the edge. Before I do that, I wanted to make sure that you know that you can make this in many, many different ways. For example, you could make the ends wider if you wanted. You could make the piece that is going to go over. We're going to put this on the front and the back. Imagine that this piece is twice as wide. So instead of 1 1/2 inches wide, maybe you have a piece that's 3 inches wide. Pretend that it's not cut in half. You could have a step card that would have the larger piece in the middle rather than having two pieces, one on each end. So there are a lot of different options that you can have making this kind of card. All right, so we have our card base. Before we put this together, we need to think about what we're going to use for designing, because we don't want to put all of these pieces together before we've actually adhered a couple of pieces, and they're the ones that are going to go in the middle. This is the time to do the middle, because we're not going to be able to get to the middle once we've adhered the smaller pieces on the side. So let me talk about the cardstock and the designer series paper that I'm going to use to reconstruct the piece or the example that I shared. I'm going to use the wonderful, gorgeous, beautiful, incredible, whatever other lovely words I can use for this designer series paper. It's called Rain or Shine. And you can see that I'm saving a bunch of scraps because I'm going to use these. And the piece that I decided to use in this particular card is this one, which is more of a scene rather than a particular design that is shown multiple times. And I wanted to explain what I did on this card. This is the one that I showed you first. And what I did for this card is I decided that when I usually see pieces like this, I'm not sure exactly what to do with them because I don't want to cut them so I'm only seeing the clouds or I'm only seeing the flowers. So to make this card, which is the bridge card, I cut out 4 inches in the middle because I wanted the flowers on the bottom and the sky on the top. And then I started experimenting and I thought, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Because now after I cut that middle out, so envision that middle gone, I had a strip that had flowers and I had a strip that had clouds. And it was, okay, what am I going to do with that? So that's what I started playing with. And I came up with the background and you can see where we're going. In that background in the middle, I use part of the flowers and then part of the sky. And I put a little dividing line. So it looks like it's okay. It looks like it's still a scene. So think about how you can use some of the paper that Stampin' Up! Has for different scenes and how you can use them together to make things that are kind of unique. So what we need is we need a piece, a design that is going to go, and let me bring out the base. It's going to go right in here. So here's how the card is going to be put together. We need a little scene or something to go right in here. And what I decided to do for that is this is going to be 3 pieces of paper. The first one is a piece of Mango Melody cardstock. It's one of the colors in the designer series paper. And this is cut so that it is going to really nicely fit right in the center of that area on the card. And the measurement for this is 5 3/8, a little bit smaller than 5 1/2. So 5 3/8, and then it is 3 1/8 inch high. So that just fits in really nicely into that area. And before I put that down, I'm going to just put my little background scene together. And you've got tons of options. You know, obviously you don't need to have designer series paper that has a scene. You could use designer series paper with a pattern. You could stamp this. You can do many, many different things with it. If you choose to use designer series paper, you can opt like I did to do 2 pieces. And if you do that, each of these pieces is 5 1/4 inches wide and 1 1/2 inches high. If you wanted to use one piece, you would double the height to 3 inches. So it would be 5 1/4 inches wide by 3 inches high. And then all I simply did, and this is not magic, not rocket science, nothing, is I just went ahead and glued these straight onto that piece. And this part is going to be hidden by the decorations that I'll put on the front of the card. But I thought it would still be fun to have something that was kind of cute and just went along with the theme. I definitely wanted to have the critters with a little scene that the bunny was playing in. And I'm just going to go ahead and put these down. Make sure when you're doing this, if you're using designer series paper, or especially if you're using 2 pieces of designer series paper, triple check before you adhere them to make sure you have your pattern going in the place that it should. So your clouds are above the flowers and the flowers are in the right direction. Because it would look kind of silly if the flowers were upside down. All right. Now, in my opinion, that looks a little hard. There's not a good break between the two. So what I decided to do is I just wanted a little visual break. And I grabbed a piece of Mango Melody cardstock. I cut it so that it is wider than that 5 1/4 or 5 3/8, excuse me, for the Mango Melody piece. And it's about 1/8 of an inch wide. I wanted it to be kind of thin because what I'm going to do is try to get that about in the middle. And I don't need to be super, super persnickety because there's going to be some design that will be hiding this piece. But I did want to try to get it about in the middle. And then I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and cut off the excess because I do want that to be flush with the edge. So just trim and trim from the back. That way you have a much, much better chance of getting things very flush with your edge. If you do it on the front, you definitely can do it, but you will probably have better luck doing it from the back. And now I can go ahead and put that right into the back of the bottom base of the card. And you'll see in a minute why it's really important to do this before we get everything else glued together. This card is going to be a little bulky. It's not terribly bad, but it's going to be a little bulky because we have a couple layers of cardstock. You could do this with designer series paper as well. And if you create this kind of step card with designer series paper, I strongly recommend that you don't use one that has a real pattern that is a vertical pattern. It would look much better, I think, if the designer series paper is a little random because you're going to see the front and the back. And if you use something that has a pattern, it could be a little disorienting. All right, so we've attached that to the inside of the base. Now what we need to do is we need to get the sides added. And we are going to start with the plain cardstock sides. And here's where we're going. We want to attach these so that the corner of the front is attached to the corner of the front. And the back is attached to the back of the card. The best way to do this is to start with one of the pieces in the front. And the best way to do this is to put your adhesive on the step of the card, not on the piece that you are going to add. And you can lie the piece down so you have a pretty good idea of how wide it is when you're putting the adhesive on that step. And you don't need a lot. And I suggest that you don't glob the glue on, just put it in kind of lightly. And then what I do is I'm going to make sure that I have the back at the back. And I'm just going to try to get those edges right flush with each other. And the best way that I found is if I use both of my fingers and I just feel when that is flush and when the other side is flush. And you can turn it over and just eyeball it and make sure that it's pretty squared off. And it's not going to take that long to set. I recommend that you use a liquid glue when you're doing this because you're probably going to need to move things around a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to do the front. I'm not going to do the back yet. I'm going to do both fronts first. So just like I did on the other side, I'm going to put the back at the back of the card. I'm going to eyeball this so I know the width that I have to put that glue on the front and just put a little. It may look like I'm putting a lot, but I'm really not. And I'm going to purposely pick this up, put my fingers right at the edge and do my best to get that so that it's right at the corner. And you may have to condense it a little bit. Just try to get it as straight as you can. If it's not perfect, it's fine. Don't worry. And that's just going to take a second to kind of set. Okay. So we have our fronts all set. Now we need to do the back. So here I'm looking at the front. These two pieces are adhered. And I'm just going to flip this over. Now, unlike the front, on the back, I want to try and get these pieces adhered almost all the way on the back of here. And let me show you why. When we open this card, if I hadn't adhered this, it might open, it might flop around a little bit. So I really want to try to get the glue up into this area on the back. And the way that I found is the best way to do this is just pull your flap up and then go ahead and put some glue. And again, you don't need to use a ton. Do these one at a time. Don't try to do both together. And then if you lay this down, and you can also pick it up just a tad because you do want to, just like you did on the front, you're going to try and get it right at the edge. And you may need to convince it a little bit. And the edge means all the way up the side this time because you're really trying to get it so that it's nice and kind of centered. And you want to hide this. You're really trying to not have the edge showing in the back. Okay. So that's one side. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do the other side. And I'm repeating what I did. Just going to take some glue and kind of put that down the middle. And then I am going to pick up the card and get that edge. Again, use my finger and just try to get everything nice and squared off. And the nice thing about the liquid, and I am moving this a little bit, is it is forgiving because it is moving kind of with me. All right, and then when I lay it flat, I'm just going to give everything a nice little push. What you may find, and it's fine, is that your score lines are not perfect where they are. Don't worry about that. It is going to work just fine. All right, and there we have the bones. So now we have a card that is opening like this. All right, so The next thing we want to do is think about more of the decorations and what we want to put on the card. And as you can see, for what I decided to do, I continued the theme of the designer series paper that's on the inside. I wanted to mimic the flowers, and there was plenty of paper left on that strip that I had cut. I cut it 4 inches because this piece that I'm going to be putting on the sides has designer series paper that is 4 inches high. And the beauty of that is that when you have 12 by 12 paper like this, I cut it initially to make my bridge card. I cut 4 inches out of the middle. I had 4 inches left on the bottom. I had 4 inches left on the top. So the 4 inches that were on the bottom are these pieces of designer series paper that have the flowers on them. And I just decided to continue that theme. So whatever you're going to do, you can choose if you want frames on the side. And obviously I did. I bring back the final card. I wanted to have a little bit of that mango melody like I had in the middle, again, to just kind of pull it together. So if that's what you want to do, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock. In my case, as I mentioned, they are Mango Melody. And the Mango Melody pieces measure 4 1/8 inches high and 1 3/8 inches wide. So this is 4 1/8 and 1 3/8, and 2 of them because you're going to have 2 pieces. And then the designer series paper is just a teeny bit narrower and not as tall. And the dimensions for the designer series paper, as I already mentioned, 4 inches high and then 1 1/4 inches wide. And that's just going to give you a nice frame with the Mango Melody. And again, this is optional. You're going to come up with different ways that you like putting this together. And you don't need a frame. You will have the card base color that will show around your designer series paper. So if you don't want to use a frame, no biggie. But like I said, I thought it would be kind of fun. And this designer series paper has so many possibilities. The colors are beautiful and they're so happy. There are some that are included that have, raindrops and rainy day themes, but they still make me smile. They're still super fun. So just trying to get that kind of centered. And then what we're going to do, and this is pretty obvious, is we're going to go ahead and adhere those side panels to the front of the card. And if you wanted to put another panel on the bottom, I would do that other panel first. But I decided that I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to break up the flowers on either side. And I put a sentiment in the bottom. But that's really your choice. If you wanted to put another design or something a little different, maybe you could tie a bow or something. I would go ahead and, if you are going to put another piece of designer series paper, go ahead and do that at this point if you're going to put it on the bottom. So we're going to adhere those 2 panels on the side, and you can see how this is starting to come together, and it's just happy. I'm just making sure that that's as straight as I can get it, and then I'll put this piece on. I think this has so many possibilities because you could very easily do a birthday card like I'm doing for a child. I think these would be really pretty for a wedding card. If you had Mr. on one side and Mrs. on the other side, and then a bridge or a piece of cardstock in the middle, maybe with some rings or something. I just think that would be super, super nice. And this kind of design would also be really pretty for any kind of sympathy card or anything like that. All right, so let's kind of see where we are and where we're going. So we have some more decorations to do. We've got a sentiment to do, and I want to show you what I used to make those. And I'm going to start with the dies that come with the stamp set. This stamp set, like I said, oh my goodness, you gotta love them. They are just adorable. And the dies that come with these they're amazing. A lot of different things that you can do. Well, I told you that I really wanted to make this into a bridge card, unintended. And lo and behold, there is a wonderful bridge die that is in the die set. And I know it was not intentional on Stampin' Up's part, but the bridge is the perfect size to put in this design because it fits just like that. It is just amazing because it was almost made for this project. And what I'm just going to do on this is put a little bit of glue and put it on here. Now, if you don't have a bridge, don't worry about it. You could either make a bridge, which would be pretty darn easy. Just cut out some pieces of cardstock, some thin, wide pieces and some thin, narrow pieces, and you could construct your own bridge, which would be kind of cool. You could make it out of paper that has wood patterns. There are quite a lot of those. Or if you don't really care if it's a bridge or not, you can cut a piece of cardstock and just make it big enough to go across. If you wanted to put some more designer series paper on that piece, go for it. That could look really, really pretty. It's just putting a cardstock piece that is going to act as the middle of the card, and it can be just about anything that you want. And I'm just trying to make this as even as I can. When you put that in the middle, whether it's a bridge like this or a piece of cardstock, just make sure that as you're putting it down, that you're only putting glue on these side panels, and that when you're putting it down, that you're really trying to get it flat. That will help ensure that the piece is going to lie the way you want it to on the card. I just love this. And this is cut out of early espresso. Definitely looks like wood. All right, now the cool, fun part. This little rabbit. That little rabbit is stinking cute. And he came, I'm calling him a he. It could be a she, but we're going to call him a he. Came from, sorry for the noise in the background, one of the pieces of the designer series paper. Now, I will confess that typically when there are pieces like this that are designed to either be used as a piece of paper or to be cut out with the dies that come with the set, I usually don't do this. I usually do not cut them out with the dies that come with the set. But with this one, I could not resist. And I wanted to tell you, and I'm sure you know this, if you choose to cut out the images, one of them that I cut out was the fox. I cut out one of the rabbits for this card. You don't need to cut out a lot of the paper. Just cut out the chunk that has the image that you want to die cut. And that way you're not going to use a lot of your paper and you'll have a lot more images to cut out. So I cut out this piece from the designer series paper. And obviously I used this die and I cut this little dude out. So cute. I love his little jacket with the flowers on it. And I would never be able to color it as well as it is done on this paper. And the paper is shiny. It has some really fun sort of embossed. It's almost like it was wet embossed. It's just really, really cute. So I cut him out, and then I also cut out some of the clouds. And remember, I said that when I cut out that big piece, that I had a 4-inch high piece that had clouds. Well, one of the dies is a cloud or a group of clouds, which not just so happened were designed to be the same shape as the clouds that are in the paper. So you can cut those pieces out from the die as well. Now, let's look at the back of this guy right now. He has stripes on him. Let's look at the card that I did, and I'm going to turn it over so you can see the back, and it's only white. If you use dies to cut out some of your designer series paper, one thing I strongly recommend that you do is that you cut out a piece of white cardstock or whatever color you want that is the same shape as your die cut piece, and that you adhere the die cut piece to that shape. There are a couple reasons for that. One is that if you do that, for example, I won't see the stripes on the back of the bunny when I put him on my card. So he's going to look a lot cleaner. The other thing is that by adding that extra piece of cardstock, this little guy is going to be stronger, and he is going to literally stand up better when I put him on the card. So now you can see that he's nice and clean on the back. And the same thing with the clouds, because I'm going to have those clouds kind of floating on the card. And I really don't like this little hash design. It's not going to look pretty on the back of the card. So I just die cut a couple more of my cloud pieces, and this is just white cardstock. And I'm just going to adhere those together so everything looks nice and pretty. And then we're going to see where I put those. But the paper, I'm going to be ordering more because all these ideas are bouncing around in my head now because of playing around with this and being able to make these die cuts from the pre-printed paper is really nice. I do like coloring, and the images that are in the stamp set are the exact same thing. So you can see he's the same size. It's just a little bit smaller on the actual case, but they're the exact same size as the paper and the dies. So you can do with them what you want. All right. So now if I bring back in the card that I've been working on, I want to put my little bunny. So it looks like he's kind of walking on this imaginary Mango Melody sidewalk. And he's just so happy, and he makes me happy. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on him. And one thing that you need to do if you start putting pieces on is make sure that those pieces do not go outside. I'll raise him up a little bit. Outside the area of the card when you fold it. What I mean by that is here's our 5.5-inch mark. I would not want to glue that bunny so that he was popping up here, because if you do that, you're not going to get him in the envelope. So I just attached him right there. And then similar to this card, I'm going to put a little cloud behind his ear because I think that just looks fun. And then I will put another cloud on one of the other sides. And to do that, I'm dry fitting this. I'm just seeing kind of where I want to put that little cloud. Do I want it there? Do I want it over here on the left? I think I like it over here. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the back of his ear. because I'm going to be very, very careful where I'm putting the glue so I get it where I want it and I don't get it where I don't want it. So I've added the glue to the back of his ear. And I'm just going to go in right behind him. Oh, he's so cute. And just hold that down for a second while the glue sets. And this is kind of fun because it looks like that cloud is sort of floating. And it's still part of the sky. And then I'll do one more and I'll put that over here. Yeah, I'll put that right over here. And I'm going to try and get it so that it will be placed so I don't see the outline of the Mango Melody cardstock. I'm just going to put a teeny bit of glue right in here. And again, I'm going to make sure that when I put that on, that I'm not going over the top so that I still have a 5.5-inch card that I can stick into an envelope. And I'll just hold that for a second while it dries. But there are all sorts of decorating options that you have with this. You can just imagine. I mean, think about it. If this were like a baby shower card, it would be so fun to do a clothesline and you could have that going from one side to the other and the baby clothes hanging down. How cute is that? And these little guys would be adorable on a baby card. So there we go. We've got our clouds kind of hanging out in different places. And it's hard for me to show this on camera, but when I set it down, it actually looks a little different because that cloud looks like it's in the front, right by his left or his right ear. The only thing I have left is the sentiment. And for this, I decided to use a happy birthday. I do like the sentiments that are in the Playing in the Rain set, but I'll be honest, I was looking for a birthday theme and I found a really pretty happy birthday in the Shaded Summer stamp set. This is one of my favorites for sentiments. It's just beautiful. And then I went to my regular, which is the rectangle stitched framelets, and I cut that out using one of the rectangle dies. And then I'm just going to attach that right down at the bottom. I don't know, haven't decided yet if I'm going to do any more bling on this card. I've kind of let it sit. I do that a lot. I will let a card just sort of hang out and I'll sneak up on it and say, you know, kind of figure out, do I want any more bling? Am I happy with the way it looks? And sort of take it from there. What I'm doing here is the bottom of that sentiment. I'm trying to align with the bottom of the Mango Melody that is on either side and sort of kind of get it in the middle. And this was cut from the Balmy Blue cardstock. And the ink that I used on this was the Early Espresso. So it just sort of blends into the background. So there he is. And this one is just as happy as the other. And you're going to see just a very, very slight difference in these two cards. I used 3 of the clouds on the one on the right, 2 on the one on the left. My Mango Melody on the sidewalk, if we want to call it that, or the background of the bridge is a little thicker here than it was over here. Big deal. But they are both just super, super fun, happy cards. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you try it. It is such a simple design. And I will also link how to make this bridge card, which is also very simple to put together. And this is another one of the die cuts. So enjoy. And I really hope you try it. I think you're going to like it and come up with a bunch of different ways to use this particular design. So until next time, pinky hugs.